Tom Fitton is the president of Judicial Watch. Greg Jarrett, Fox News legal analyst. Greg, let's go to your legal mind, and you've read the document now many times. Tell us what you think.
I think charges will be brought under 18 U.S.C. 242 for abuse of power. It's clear that people at the FBI and the Department of Justice, many of them, approved of the use of the dossier to present to a judge, knowing that it was inherently suspect, dubious, and they never disclosed all the relevant information. In fact, they actively misrepresented the authenticity of the dossier. They didn't, as you mentioned, point out that it was paid for as opposition research by Hillary Clinton and the DNC.
If they had told the court this, is there any chance in hell the warrant would have been granted?
No way. And look, it's very revealing that Andrew McCabe of the FBI admitted under oath that no FISA warrant would even have been sought without the dossier, and on top of that, that they misrepresented and lied about the dossier. Now, all of that is an abuse of power. It's a violation of a felony statute called deprivation of rights under color of law. 10 years behind bars is the punishment. And a great many of these people who are behind all of this, who lied about it to the court.
Who would be the people? Let's name names. Who's in legal jeopardy as it relates to the release of the memo?
James Comey, Andrew McCabe, Sally Yates, Rod Rosenstein, and of course Bruce Orr at the Department of Justice. Those are the people who knew about this and who misrepresented it to the court.
What is your take, Tom Fitton?
Well, I think this is about the Mueller investigation, ultimately. There is no Mueller investigation without the FISA, and there's no FISA without the dossier. There is no dossier that is legitimate to serve as a basis for a FISA warrant. That means there was no reason to appoint Mueller as special counsel. When you have McCabe testify under oath, there would have been no FISA application without this dossier, which we now know was paid for with Clinton and DNC funds. That means, therefore, there would have been no special counsel appointed. Call the whole thing off.
Do you agree with that, Greg Jarrett?
Why the deep state so deeply opposed the release of this information.
Do you agree with that, Greg Jarrett?
To some extent, yes, although the FBI and the Department of Justice would argue that there were other things that led them to launch in July of 2016.
Would they be able to call as a witness? Collusion. Would they be able to call as a witness the FISA judge that approved it? Because we don't know if this included 90% of his approval process, 10%. Wouldn't he weigh in on that? And I don't know if he would. Look, FISA is, by its very nature, supposed to be secret. So we don't know what percent. But I've got to believe that this dossier played a pretty big role.
Well, there would have to be procedures undertaken to protect the identity of the FISA judge, because it is an entirely secret process for legitimate reasons. You don't want his name to get out there. This is the guy who proves all kinds of things, and it could put his life in jeopardy. So it would have to be done in secret.
Okay, so who are the people, let's name names, Greg, that should be calling their lawyers right now? James Comey's gotten very arrogant, and on his Twitter very sanctimoniously he's out there, that's it. And I'm like, yeah, you can't exonerate somebody without investigating them. And he even said that under oath himself. Number two, he signed off on all of this, and he knew the dossier was phony. He wanted, in fact, to hire this guy, Christopher Steele. We do believe there might have been some money that changed hands in some capacity. We haven't gotten a full answer to that question. And more importantly, he knew that the judge wasn't told, didn't he?
Yeah, James Comey pretends to be a good guy. In fact, he's a bad guy. He's self-righteous in the process. I'm surprised his attorney, and I'm sure he's lawyered up by now, hasn't told him to keep his mouth shut and keep his hands off his Twitter account. Comey's in legal jeopardy for a variety of things, and now he's in legal jeopardy because of his approval of a dossier in the process of lying to a federal judge about it.
Yeah. What's your take, Tom Fitton?
Yeah, I mean, this is a serious issue, I think, for Comey. I think, practically speaking, it's the most serious issue for Mr. Rosenstein, since he's in office still. Of the four individuals involved in approving the FISA warrants, Rosenstein is the only current official. So he has some explaining to do, and I think it's fair to ask whether he be fired or, in the least, have to recuse himself from further handling of the Russia investigation. So Mr. Mueller may have another supervisor pretty soon.
What about Rod Rosenstein's conflict in all of this, appointing Robert Mueller, and then also the guy that was responsible for signing off a number of times on renewing this FISA warrant, Greg?
It certainly calls into question his poor judgment, which we already knew about. I think in the end you're going to find that James Comey and Mueller and Rosenstein engineered this whole investigation. Comey already admitted he leaked presidential memos to trigger his good friend's appointment, and Rosenstein is in on it. Both Rosenstein and Mueller have disqualifying conflicts of interest. All of these guys are behaving badly, and in Rosenstein's case, he may have violated the law.
Well, I think we've got some real questions here. Let me go and take it a step further. We have, now that we know that the fix was in on Hillary's email server investigation, we're also having an IG report. We expect that next month. Already 1.2 million documents have been handed over regarding this. But just based on what we know about mishandling classified, top secret, special access program information and destroying such information, and then deleting 33,000 subpoenaed emails, and then acid wash and bleach bit of the hard drive so nobody can find them again, and beating the living crap out of mobile devices with a hammer to make sure they don't exist. It seems that we have 18 U.S.C. 793 and obstruction of justice possibilities for Hillary. Is there any statute of limitations on this, Greg Jarrett?
Well, there is normally a 5-year statute of limitations, so not all of her activities have lapsed, but some may have. Although there are exceptions to the statute of limitations, and there are some other statutes she appears to have violated egregiously in which the statute of limitations hasn't run.
So what is she thinking today? Well, if you're Hillary Clinton, what are you thinking about all of this now being revealed?
Well, she's probably very worried, but she's been so incredibly arrogant throughout the entire process, repeatedly lying to the American people about the reasons for her server, then claiming there was no classified documents on it. It was a patent lie. There's a certain amount of arrogance that leads Hillary Clinton and Bill Clinton to think they're above the law, they can get away with anything. I'm not sure that will be the case now.
All right, I'm going to have to let you both go. 800